is the Will Cain Podcast on ESPN Radio.
SEC, 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 SEC.
Yeah, let me hear from you, Missouri Tigers.
SEC, SEC.
How about you Aggies over there in College Station?
SEC,
we're back.
SEC,
Tennessee fans.
SEC,
Jonathan. How about you, Florida?
SEC,
SEC, SEC. How about you, Alabama?
Oh, maybe they didn't hear us.
Hey, Alabama, what do you say?
Nothing? No? You're not with us? We thought we're all in this together. Nothing? Oh, so sad for you. Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, Alabama. And Alabama alone has another national championship to add to their record. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, presented by Progressive Insurance. Maybe that's silence you hear from Alabama. Or maybe that is the clanging sound of brass from between Nick Saban's knees. Maybe what you hear is the sound of the gutsiest call in the history of college football. Nick Saban, starting the second half in the national championship game between Alabama and Georgia, elects to bench his 25-2 starter, Jalen Hurts. His starter who has thrown only one interception the entire season long. To bench that player in the national championship game for a true freshman. And it is a call that will go down in history.
Well, I just thought we had to throw the ball in the game, and I thought he could do it better. And he did. He did a good job. He made some plays in the passing game. So, hey, it's just a great win, man. I'm so happy for Alabama fans. Great for our players. Unbelievable.
It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. I have to tell you, I cannot think of a gutsier, and that is the G-rated version of what I really want to say, because sometimes there are certain words that evoke the exact thing you want to say, and sometimes the FCC doesn't allow you to say it. So we'll call it the gutsiest move you have seen in college football. I cannot think of a bolder, riskier, bigger move than benching Jalen Hurts for Tua. I don't even know if I can do it. Can I do it?
Give it a shot.
Tagovailoa.
That's pretty close.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tua Tagovailoa.
Think it works.
It is absolutely stunning. In fact, if there's anything that even arrives at a close second of the moment, sort of rising to the occasion, calm in the center of the storm, willingness to be bold, the only, and it is the second place nature, not the first, Nick Saban has claimed that, has to go to Tua Tagovailoa himself.
I mean, I found out when we were in the locker room, Coach brought the quarterbacks together, and he made the statement that, Tua, you're going to start out the second half, and, we're going to rotate the quarterbacks, see how things go. So we went from there.
When Tua Tagovailoa took that sack in overtime, a 16-yard sack that he absolutely could not take. He could not take that sack to put Alabama at 2nd and 26. When he took that sack, he looked over at the sideline where there was a absolutely volcanic Nick Saban going bananas, completely apoplectic at his young quarterback, completely upset at the freshman he put in. And there was serenity on Tagovailoa's face. There was nothing but calm in Tua's eyes. And he nails a 41-yard touchdown to Donta Smith to win the national championship game. I have to tell you, people are afraid to win. That's the God's honest truth. People are afraid to win. They are. I don't care if it's football. I don't care if it's business. I don't care if it's the office you're sitting in right now. Look around you, and I promise you one thing. People are terrified to win. Winning isn't their primary goal. Winning isn't what most people are about. Winning isn't what most people wake up to do. Most people go through life looking to avoid failure, not looking to grasp success. I promise you this. I can promise you from my own personal experience. I can promise you from the halls of big companies I've worked in. I can promise you from being an entrepreneur in small businesses in Texas. If you want to win, you are already ahead of the game, and Nick Saban wanted to win. He said, yeah, want to win. Platitude, cliche, everybody wants to win. No, they don't. They're not willing to take the risk. They're not willing to put it on the line to grasp victory. They'd rather stay safe and try to avoid failure. That was one of the boldest, gutsiest, brassiest calls I have seen in sports.
You think that Saban's the only coach that makes that move?
I don't know if he's the only coach, Cerruti. I don't know if he's the only coach. But he is the coach that did it, man.
I don't want to come off as like the Saban. I think Saban's incredible. He's the best college football coach of all time. I don't even think it's a debate anymore. But he had no other choice. Jalen Hurts had 21 yards passing in the first half. They weren't going to score, Will.
He did have another choice. I get that everybody in hindsight seems to think it was an obvious move. And maybe you said, Cerruti, maybe you did. Maybe you said at halftime, this has to happen. But if you did, you need to be on our college football coverage.
Well, it wasn't just me. I mean, Herbie was they were talking about it at halftime.
And I got to give credit to Paul Feinbaum's callers because I dipped in and out of every megacast we had last night at halftime. You know, Phyllis and Mulgo was calling in going, time to make the change. Time to put 13 in. And I got to give them credit because they're locked in. They're dialed in. But here's the God's honest truth. I don't think it was obvious. I don't think it was clear. And I don't think it was safe. I think when you're sitting at Las Vegas tables, say you're at the blackjack table, and you're getting hammered, and this one dealer is, they're somehow every time that dealer is sitting on 16, they pull it to they pull a 4. It's a 20. You're sitting at the roulette table, and you're like, red, 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 red. You can convince yourself, no. It's going to change. It'll come black sooner or later. That ball will bounce the other way sooner or later. Sooner or later, the tide will turn at this table and this dealer will lose the luck. And sooner or later, your quarterback that has a 25-2 record and has thrown only one interception and yes, has holes in his game, holes that you know very well, holes that you've seen over the last 2 seasons and holes that you've seen this season in comparison specifically to Tua Tagovailoa. But the safe call is to stick with what's been working for 2 seasons, man. That's what's safe. This, Cerruti, was full of brass.
I'm not saying that it wasn't a bold move, but it was. I feel like it was the only move that he had to make. Like, what else is he going to do? They were not moving the ball. Jalen clearly couldn't do anything, and throughout the entire season, they haven't needed Jalen Hurts to do that much. And this specific spot was probably the first time that they needed production from the quarterback position, more importantly, throwing it down the field. And he knew he had that on the bench. That's the only move that you could have made. Now, obviously, he knew how important and how good Tua really was, and the rest of us could have just been speculating. But Will, if he did not put Tua in, they were not going to score 13 points and match them. It was 13-0 at halftime. They weren't going to get to 13 points, period.
That certainly looks like it was the case, and that certainly seems to be the case.
So you have nothing.
Look back in
you're already in a lose situation, so you have nothing to lose at that point, right?
That's not true. You're Alabama. It's
no
Jalen
one's going to
Hurts.
criticize Nick Saban. He's won 5 national titles to that point.
Listen to Joey Galloway.
It's a big call. I mean, but Jalen Hurts was struggling. You know, when they come out in the second half, and I was, switching from one set to the next set, and I'm catching the TV as I walk by, and I look up and I see Tua in the game. I'm like, this is amazing. This is truly amazing that Coach Saban just said, look, let's go for it because this is it. This is our only chance. Let's take it.
All right. Joey thinks it's a big call. You think it was obvious. You think it was no risk, no lose. I think it's one of the gutsiest calls in college football history. We can talk about it. We can say, what does it rival? What other calls can you put up against this? Onside kicking it against Clemson a few years ago? Sean Payton in the Super Bowl, onside kicking it? What would you call, what is even remotely comparable to this call? That's Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest, most dependable 4G LTE networks. Straight ahead. By the way, Florida, we saw your tweet. Is this the gutsiest college football play, the gutsiest coaching call in college football history? And we'll get to you, Florida. We'll get to you, SEC. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Hi, everyone. Will Cain here. Support for the Will Cain podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/will. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
a champion crown.
Was that a good game or what?
The Alabama Crimson Tide.
Alabama breaks Georgia Hurts.
Coach brought the quarterbacks together, and he made the statement that Tua, you're going to start out the second half, and we're going to rotate the quarterbacks.
Touchdown! Devontae Smith wins the national championship.
This was a great win for our players, and I've never been happier in my life.
There's the call as you heard on ESPN Radio last night. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests, including you, are on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Join us, Willisha. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. I think it's it may very well be the gutsiest, brassiest, boldest coaching call in football history. I just think taking your 25-2, that was Jalen Hurts' record going into the national championship game last night, Nick Saban sitting him, despite the fact that Cerruti has very well pointed out, he threw for 21 yards. What was he, 3 for 8 in the first half?
Yep.
Despite that fact, it takes big ones to say, nope, I'm going to the true freshman. And I've asked, what are we comparing this to? I mean, if this isn't one of the boldest moves in football history, what is? Thomas in Oklahoma, if this is not the boldest coaching move in football history, what is?
Patriots in 2009, 4th and 2. With Peyton Manning on the other sideline, they go for it, give it to him on the 29-yard line, so they lose the AFC title game.
But first of all, bravo, Thomas. Great call. I don't know that it's any bigger than this, but I'll tell you this, and this is what I'm proud of the listeners that the Willisha has already developed in just the first week and a half. I put out to the ESPN crack research staff, what's the boldest? Here you go. I said, give me the boldest coaching calls in football history. And as Thomas had pointed out, Thomas from Oklahoma, Bill Belichick, 2009, Patriots, Colts, going for it on 4th and true from his own 28. Mathematically, the correct thing to do. Didn't work out for him. Here's a couple others. I mentioned it. Sean Payton, onside kick in Super Bowl 44 to start the game. How about Nick Saban 2 years ago in the championship game against Clemson? Another onside kick. 1984, the Orange Bowl. Nebraska goes for 2 instead of kicking an extra point against Miami. An extra point would have tied the game, but instead they go for the win. As I've said, everyone's afraid to win. They went for 2 for the win, failed. Miami won the national title. That may be, if there is one to outpace benching your starting quarterback for the last 2 seasons, a quarterback that has led you to a national title and a quarterback that has put you in position to win another, to start a true freshman, if there is, that might be it, the 1984 Orange Bowl. Now, Cerruti, you pointed out during the break, you're like, man, people aren't afraid to win, Will. They're afraid of something else.
Yeah, I think they're less afraid of failure. They're more afraid of the criticism that comes after their decision, their controversial decision doesn't go the way that everybody wants it to go. But the thing is, I think if Saban didn't make this decision last night and left Jalen Hurts in there and say they finished with like 6 points, I think he gets criticized for not making that move.
I don't think so. I think he would be criticism-free. It would all land on Jalen Hurts.
Everyone would just shrug their shoulders and be like, well, I guess... I mean, people knew who Tua was. They knew this guy was on the bench. He had played a little bit this year. I think that was the only move he had. That was the only card he had to play, Will.
I heard...
Doesn't mean it wasn't brilliant. It was brilliant. But it's the only card he had to play.
You're very anti-Saban today, I can tell.
I'm pro-Saban. I love Saban.
I heard Greg McElroy last night. He was in the Feinbaum room at halftime, and as I said, callers were calling in saying, you got to make this move. And McElroy talked about the championship that he won with Alabama in 2009 when Colt McCoy went down for Texas, and Garrett Gilbert stepped in, a true freshman. And Garrett Gilbert went on to make some plays, not unlike Tua did last night. Moved the ball downfield, but he also threw 4 interceptions and fumbled the ball. And McElroy's point was, this is what you get with a true freshman. Of course, after the game, McElroy was talking about a much different future for Tua.
Anybody that's been around the program has seen Tua and has been kind of blown away. And I've watched him on multiple different occasions, dating back to last spring, and I thought to myself, this kid is really special. Now, I'm not sure he knows what's going on all the time, and I think that was evidenced by the sack in overtime and the interception that he threw as he was rolling to his left trying to throw it away, it was a pick. I mean, he's going to have some mistakes, but I'm willing to go on record. I really believe this. I think he's going to win a Heisman Trophy at some point. I really think he has that level of upside.
Whoa. Greg's got him with multiple Heisman trophies. He's got him Archie Griffin already.
People are penciling in him as the 2-time Heisman Trophy winner the next 2 years and Alabama winning 3 straight national championships.
See if we can get Greg on the phone, because I need to reconcile multiple Heisman trophies against not sure he should be in because he could be a reincarnation of Garrett Gilbert at halftime. Bill on Sirius XM in Virginia. What's up, Bill?
Wow, you kind of touched on it before I got on, but I don't think that this is like the biggest move that Saban ever made. He played the one card that he played, and he's got a history of commoditizing his quarterbacks. So he put a kid in there, and the kid made a play, and either way, Saban was going to live with there. He was just going to rotate Jalen Hurts out there. I don't think that his MO, Saban's, is one that he's this big risk taker. He just says, hey, this guy's not working, we're taking him out.
All right, I appreciate the call, Bill. Here's the thing. I heard Lane Kiffin talking on the Dan Le Batard show this morning about, you're right, Saban isn't some big risk taker. In fact, he's very risk averse. He's very old school conservative in nature. Run the ball, play defense. But I don't think you can take away from him this decision. I don't think you can take away the boldness or the riskiness of this decision. It may have been his only card to play, but he still had to play it. Most people sit at the table and think the luck is going to change. Most people sit there and think sooner or later that ball's going to stop bouncing on red and it's going to bounce on black. And when I've got a quarterback that's 25-2, sitting still and thinking it might change or making a few coaching adjustments, meaning play calls, will probably do the trick. Not going to the true freshman. I just think this is, look, it's easy to worship at the church of Saban. But this is why the man is one of the greatest coaches, or the greatest coach of all time. This call to me was massive. And by the way, it was a roller coaster every step of the way. You may call it hindsight, perfectly obvious, perfectly clear. It was only his only card to play. The entire time that Tua was playing, it was not obvious. Yes, he was moving the ball, but he was on the verge of turnovers. He made turnovers. He got lucky with touchdowns. Tua's entire second half teeter-tottered on greatness and failure, success and failure. The entire second half was walking that line.
Yeah, but there's no doubt when you saw the first half compared to the second half. Yeah, I know Tua made some mistakes. There's no doubt that that team had a better chance to win with Tua at quarterback.
Tua Tagovailoa was in the zone last night at the national championship game. In the Zone is brought to you by AutoZone. Get in the zone, AutoZone. Well, all right, you got to take an L, Cerruti.
I will not.
You have an L to take. Take it like a man. Pour some milk on it, salt, pepper, however you want to take it.
Tell me why I should take an L.
You know why. You know why. You said this would be a snoozer.
And what was the first half?
I have an L or two to take myself. Although I got a couple W's. I said take the over.
Listen, if I had known that Hawaiian Tim Tebow was going to come in the second half and just take over this game and like capture our hearts, then yeah, I wouldn't have said this game was going to be boring. If he had left Jalen Hurts in the game, that was going to be a typical boring SEC football game, and it would have ended like 16-6, and we would have all been bored, and the rating would have nearly as been high. It was saved by Tua. I'm not going to take an L for that.
All right. Well, let's Cerruti be a little more defensive as we reveal the ratings for the game last night. What exactly it did nationally, regionally. Was this the snoozer that Cerruti predicted? And what happened to Florida? Why are you claiming a little piece of that national championship, Gator fans? Embarrassing for you. Plus Rece Davis on where Nick Saban's moves rank on those boldest moves in football history. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Was this the biggest coaching call in college football history? Football history? There's been several other entries brought in. People have brought up the 1984 Rose Bowl. 1904 Orange Bowl, Nebraska-Miami. Nebraska goes for 2, fails, giving Miami the national championship. Nathan in California, you brought up another big moment, another big call. What's up, Nathan?
Yeah, 2007 Fiesta Bowl, Boise State against Oklahoma with both the hook and ladder, and then the Statue of Liberty. The hook and ladder scored the tying touchdown, and then the Statue of Liberty for the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, I think that's big, Nathan. Thanks for the call. Here's the deal, though. There's a certain level of bravery that comes with being the underdog. Nothing to lose, letting it fly, shoot all your bullets when you've got the chance. Boise State was the underdog, and, by the way, it also wasn't the national championship game. Maybe that 1984 Orange Bowl is is on the level with it. I just can't think of any other moments where I look at it and go, that is one bold coaching move. One guy that would be able to help me figure this out would be College Game Day host Rece Davis on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Rece, I'm watching this last night. I'm thinking about it last night. I'm thinking about it today. And to me, Saban benching a starter for 2 years with a record of 25-2 who threw only one interception this year, despite or in spite of how poorly he'd played in the first half, and going to a true freshman, I just can't think of anything that bold, that big. I can't think of another move that you could say a coach has that much brass to do it. What am I missing?
I think the only thing, Will, and I agree with you in theory from a 30,000-foot view of it, if you really look at, the situation of the game, it was really their only chance to win. Because as great a leader and tough a guy and good a runner as Jalen Hurts is, he's not an instinctive or gifted passer. He has a strong arm, but not necessarily an instinctive passer. Tua Tagovailoa is. They were behind. Georgia was refusing to give in to just runs and quarterback runs, even though Jalen popped a couple. So I think it was their only chance. But B, this is something that had been in the works a little bit too, because of Tua's progression, the number of gifted receivers that they have that weren't being fully utilized, and the struggles in the passing game, particularly on third down, against really good defenses, and not just in their last two losses, but certainly against Auburn and Clemson in the national championship game last year, but also a little bit against LSU, a little bit against Mississippi State. That all of those things sort of conspired to make it. It was not some big surprise to the players last night that Saban would go ahead and make that move. In fact, they were prepared to do so in the Sugar Bowl had the game gone a little bit differently against Clemson.
Where will Jalen Hurts play college football next year?
That I don't know. I mean, I think the fair thing to do, I'm sure what Nick will try to do, is to have an open competition between the two in the offseason and the spring. I would be disingenuous, Will, if I told you I believe that if that happens, that I certainly believe that Tua Tagovailoa will win that competition. Right now, as it stands, and look, I have all the respect in the world for Jalen Hurts. How he carried himself last night was remarkable because that hurts. I mean, I know he's thrilled for his teammates, and I know he's a great teammate, but at that position on that stage, that hurt. And he handled it with great dignity and class. But right now, I think if he is a long-term future playing quarterback, absent great improvement in willingness to throw guys open, willingness to put the ball in windows rather than having to have a clear path to throw the ball, absent great improvement, I'm not sure his professional future would be at quarterback. So, maybe there's a position change. Now, look, Nick's not anywhere near that line of thinking yet, but that would be my suspicion. If he wants to play quarterback, then and wants to be the starting quarterback, then I don't know what he does. If I were him, and I would advise any quarterback in this situation, especially one that's got 2 years of school, in Jalen's case, 2.5, because he came in the spring, I would stay, regardless of the role. If you want to play quarterback, keep playing quarterback. Try to beat the guy out. Maybe you'll get your chance. Graduate, and then transfer as a graduate so you don't have to sit out a year. I mean, that would be, that'd be my advice to pretty much any quarterback going into that situation. When you go in, try to get your degree in 3 years so you have options.
Well, speaking of that, you brought up, Rece, that it's when you're on the ground, it's not as surprising as it looks like from a management decision from 30,000 feet. That Tua had been making ground on Jalen Hurts throughout the fall, that going into the Sugar Bowl, there was talk that he could get playing time in that, if not start in that game. But along with that came Lane Kiffin this morning on Dan Le Batard's show, who said that Tua was so frustrated that he didn't play in the Sugar Bowl that the word on the street was he was considering transferring this week after the national championship game. What do you know about that?
I don't know anything factual about that, Will, other than I've heard the whispers too, and I assume they're correct. Tua wanted to play and believed that he was the better player. And he's been a good teammate this year, by all accounts, by Nick's account, by the assistant coaches, players I talked to this week. been a great teammate. He hasn't, been kicking and screaming, making a scene or any of that stuff, but he thinks he's better. So he thinks he'd earned the right to play. And after last night, I would agree with him. So quarterbacks transfer. That's what they do. If they're not playing because they get worried that this clock is going and their pro career's coming and they want to make the most of the college career and all of that kind of stuff. I can't sit here and tell you, yes, he was going to school A or school B, but I would think that would have been very likely, especially had they just stuck with Jalen Hurts and the offense had not gotten any better and they'd lost the game. Now, let me hasten to add, I think that had absolutely zero to do with Nick making that decision, less than zero. He was trying to win the game. And I think that's one thing. When I talked to Nick this morning about all of this, we had a conversation that'll be on the various ESPN platforms. I asked him about the difficulty on a personal level of making that decision because of his respect for Jalen as a competitor and all of those types of things. And he said, I understand what you're saying, but you have to be fair to everybody and give the team the best chance to win the game. And we felt like Tua did that because of his ability as a passer. And I think we get lost in that sometimes. I know I do, that you just think about the quarterback and you're not thinking about the receivers and the line who may have been providing good enough pass protection only to end up giving a sack because the quarterback, whoever it may be, didn't turn loose of the ball. And, I think that's where it stands. I don't think Tua's decision about his future had anything to do with putting him into the game, but I do suspect that Lane was 100% correct.
That's a really good point. Yeah, are you being fair to one guy or are you being fair to the entire team? I appreciate it, Rece. I got to get out of here, but appreciate your time.
Okay, bud. You bet, man.
That's Rece Davis, College Game Day host on the Shale Pennzoil Performance Line. This is the Will Cain Show, reminding you that you can listen to all 3 hours of the show on your phone or on your ESPN app. Let's take it from the other side of the equation, okay? We've talked a lot about Alabama. We need to talk about Jalen Hurts because Rece brings up an amazing point, a great point that I want to spend some time on. What a class act Jalen Hurts is. We owe it to Jalen. We owe it to talking about athletes when they do positive things to talk about this. But Georgia fans, I mean, you have a little bit of a reason to be feeling robbed today, right? The officiating was really bad. That's straight ahead on the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. To talk about Jalen Hurts. We owe this. We owe this to Jalen Hurts. We owe this to, honestly, the nature of sports talk radio. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app presented by Progressive Insurance. Really, the nature of the business is often to criticize. We look at athletes who fall short of our expectations, and we make sure the world knows how they've fallen short. And it's not really just born out of negativity. It's born out of so many things. For example, how do we want to teach our children to be? And I'm not trying to get overly sentimental or overly sappy. I got to be honest. Last night in that game, it was 1 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast when it ended. I couldn't wait for my kids to wake up, my two boys the next morning. I got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I just couldn't wait for them to wake up so I could tell them about both Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa. Because there was such good lessons on both sides of it. I wanted to tell my sons about, hey, every time, just because you're not starting, just because the job isn't yours, be ready. You never know. Your opportunity could come. It may even come in the national championship game. And it may come when you step up to make the game-winning play. I wanted to tell my sons, be ready. Be ready, even though you're not starting. But more importantly, man, did I want to tell them about Jalen Hurts. Again, we spend so much time talking about when athletes fall short of our expectations. I'll give you an example. We often talk about Cam Newton and the way that Cam handles victory and defeat and the different versions of Cam we often see when he's succeeding versus when he's failing. And some of that, much of that, is very deserved. The way Jalen Hurts conducted himself last night was so utterly impressive and classy that I wanted immediately to tell my sons, look at this guy. This guy right here was benched in possibly the biggest game of his life. He was subbed out for a freshman. And his response was to support Tua every time a series ended, every time he came back to the sideline. And then at the end of the game, when Alabama's won the national championship game on an amazing play by Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts is interviewed, and Jalen Hurts is nothing but class. Jalen Hurts supported his team, supported Tua, handled himself with dignity, handled himself with class, and I'll tell you one thing that Jalen Hurts is this morning. He's a national champion, and he's 26 now in games started for Alabama. What a model for everyone to follow. We need to take the time to talk about guys like Jalen Hurts. He may not play at Alabama next year. He may not play a quarterback next year, but I'll tell you one thing. He'll be somebody I'll point to. All right. The Will Cain Show is reminding that if you can listen to all 3 hours of the show on your phone, on your ESPN app. Now, Salty Cerruti won't take his L. He won't talk about how
there's no L to take, Will.
He predicted a snoozer yesterday. I mean,
was it not a snoozer until the ultimate wild card got pulled out of the hat by Nick Saban? It was a complete snooze. It was 13-0. Alabama couldn't move the ball. It was exactly what I said was going to happen. And then, like I said, Hawaiian Tim Tebow saved the day.
Calling him Hawaiian Tim Tebow, and we've already awarded him multiple Heisman trophies. What's up, Greg McElroy? Give us a call. It's a little early on some of this. Here you go, Cerruti. Here's the evidence, okay? Last night did 28.4 million viewers. It's the second highest rated national championship game in history. At least, actually, since the playoffs have begun. The highest is 2015, Oregon, Ohio State. 33.9 million people watched that game. Then the ratings went down for the next 2 years. Back up here. This is your second highest rated game. By the way, I think this is interesting of note. Oklahoma, Georgia did 26.8 million. The semifinal game almost approached this national championship level game. College football is in a good spot, folks. College football is doing well. And you're not the only one that has to take an L, because I said, look, I don't expect these ratings to be good. This is a regional border rivalry. This isn't the clash of titans across the nation.
But you could argue that the reason the ratings went up is because Tua came in and totally saved the day, and people were interested and hopped on the bandwagon late.
Do you have minute by minutes?
I don't.
Do you have your quarter hours there, Cerruti?
I don't, but this is what I'm predicting.
You're worse
than me,
Big
spikes
man.
In like the middle of the third quarter.
You're worse than me. You're worse than Max. Max talking about hanging on till the end of January. I have till the end of the month.
18 months.
You're waiting on your quarter hours to save your prediction. By the way, I got a fair ruling from Freezing Cold Takes. I've been called out by University of Michigan Barstool for my Jim Harbaugh will be the next coach of the New York Giants take. And I said, I said at the time, give me a month. Give me a month. My month has expired. But I've asked that can I at least have until the job is open, a job is filled, or at least to the end of the month like Max. Can I pay my bills at the end of the month? And I've got a ruling from Freezing Cold Takes. I get through that time period to see if I'm the biggest idiot in Ann Arbor. By the way, while we're on the subject of Ann Arbor, let me tell you something else Tua has revealed. Why has Texas, the Texas Longhorns, why have they not been able to find a quarterback since Colt McCoy, since 2009? Why can Jim Harbaugh, quarterback guru, whose job now depends on doing this, not find a quarterback? Better hope Shea Patterson's good. Why can these programs not find quarterbacks when, by the way, the vast majority of them, including Jalen Hurts, come from the state of Texas? And Nick Saban pulls a freshman out in a national championship game. Why? Why?
Well, it's development, isn't it? I mean, they're getting the guys. Like, Gilbert was a 5-star, wasn't he?
Gilbert was a 5-star. You're talking about Garrett Gilbert, who started or stepped into the 2009 championship game against Alabama for Texas when Colt McCoy got hurt. And Tua is a 4-star. Tua's not, I think he was the 53rd ranked recruit in the nation. So you're telling me he started in spring with them. In that time, they developed him? Look, recruiting is not science. Recruiting is shadows on a wall. But I guess everybody missed on Tua, except Nick Saban again. Oh, cool. We got Greg McElroy, 5 Eastern. Good. Greg's going to jump in. I want to ask him about some of his predictions. Coming up, let's talk to a super, super sad Georgia fan next. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
This is the Will Cain Podcast on ESPN Radio.
SEC, 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 SEC.
Yes, Alabama beats Georgia 26-23 in the national championship game for college football. But in a way, it's really only 1/14 of a championship for Alabama because, as we know how it works in the SEC, it's everybody's championship. Everybody gets a share. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, presented by Progressive Insurance. And if you don't think I'm correct, And if that makes you cringe a little bit, or if that makes you angry or have the slightest bit of emotion, I want you to know this. Last night, the University of Florida Gators tweeted out, SEC, SEC, exclamation point, exclamation point. The Florida Gators cheered on the Alabama Crimson Tide and or either way it goes, it could have cheered on the Georgia Bulldogs to the national championship, because if you can't have one, what better thing than having one of your rivals win it? It's an utter embarrassment for the Florida Gators. An absolute embarrassment. And if it was some 21-year-old running your Twitter account, trying to be cool, stop it. Take it from them right now. This is not the SEC's championship. This is Alabama's championship. This is like, I don't know, this is like some Germanic tribe in the year 100 AD being conquered by the Romans, conscripted into a slave army, marched across the continent to fight another tribe in France, and all the while yelling, Rome, Rome, Rome. They have conquered you, stolen all of your property, taken your women, conscripted your men into their slave army, and now have you chanting their names. Alabama owns you. The only team in the SEC that doesn't chant SEC is Alabama. That's embarrassing for the rest of you. It's embarrassing for Florida that you somehow would claim something like this. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Hop on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line with me. You know who the star of the Megacast was last night? I watched all of them. I dipped into the cool room. I dipped into the LA room. I saw LZ doing his crunches. I dipped into the coach's film room. And Mike Gundy gave Gary Patterson a run. David Cutcliffe gave Gary Patterson a run. They ultimately fell short. The star of the Megacast was SportsCenter anchor and Georgia alum Elle Duncan, who's now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. So, Elle, on one hand, it's a crushing loss for you. But on the other hand, the SEC won the national championship. So how do you feel?
Yeah, that's a total joke, Will. That's a total joke. Listen, I don't know if it's because I'm too petty, but there's absolutely no way that this feels like a win for anybody but Alabama. This doesn't feel like a win for me. I'm not like, oh, well, but at the very least, it was another SEC team. The fact that it was another SEC team, to me, is all the more reason to be disgusted by it. Like, I agree with you that I think Florida has totally and completely embarrassed themselves. And maybe it's because they're in a position where they know they're so many years away from being able to contend for that. Hell, just to contend for an SEC championship. But I find it to be a total embarrassment. I'm not happy. I don't feel good about the fact that it's a great story about a kid coming in and persevering at that. Like, none of that. That is all hogwash. And I'd like to say another thing, but I can't cuss, so.
Well, I know how that is. The FCC has its rules. I've been having to use the word gutsy today to describe Nick Saban's coaching move. That's not the word I want to use. But no, be honest now, Elle, with this, Elle. If Georgia were not in that game and Oklahoma were, if it were Alabama versus Oklahoma, would you be like everybody else, chanting SEC and rooting Alabama on?
No. Again, and I'll say this much. I don't think it's, like, for me, not all teams, SEC teams, are created equal in terms of who I will show some, like, dim-witted, like, support behind, but Alabama's not one of them. I don't like Alabama. Georgia, Alabama have a thing. I don't think Georgia, LSU really have a thing. If it was LSU, would I be chanting SEC? No. Would I say, okay, good, I'm glad that it's a SEC school over a Big Ten school or a Big 12 school, or even an ACC school? Sure. But no, to me, Alabama is not created equal. Like, if it was Ole Miss, I might be like, well, look at the kids.
How cute.
Look at them go.
Right.
But there's just a total, hatred there amongst Alabama and Georgia. Not so much as it used to be between, like, Georgia and Tennessee, but it's certainly there. We don't get along. And the way that Nick Saban has crushed our souls so often, there's no way I'd be taking any ownership in this national championship if it was someone else.
SportsCenter anchor and big dog fan, Georgia alum Elle Duncan on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get instant gold status at Shell. Join the Fuel Rewards program now at fuelrewards.com/gold. All right, so you were the star last night.
For making such a jackass out of myself.
Because you cared.
I do care,
Elle. I mean, honestly, you were the inspiration. I just told Smallman, we need to have, like, a fan room. Like a room, if we're going to do this Megacast thing, have people that care. And, like, your emotions, when I went into one of the megacasts, that was what was to ride with, not comedy. Just like you cared. So what happened to your team last night? Why did this happen to you?
Yeah, I mean, I literally woke up asking myself that same question, praying it was all a nightmare. I do care, and I care for a few reasons. Like, I don't know if you actually kind of noticed the sweatshirt that I was wearing. It said Georgia on it, but it had every single logo from every team associated with Georgia, right? So the Braves and the Falcons and Atlanta United and the Hawks. And I think that, some of that emotion is because there is such a need in Georgia to excise some of these demons. There really is. Like, I've been a Georgia fan my whole life, but even if you weren't like a Bulldog, like a UGA fan, last night felt like it would have been redemption somehow for Falcons fans and for Hawks fans and for Braves fans. Like, we needed that. We needed that because we needed to be able to get past this narrative that we can't ever win big games. And because even before the Falcons, this didn't just start last year for us. This wasn't, oh my God, the most epic collapse in Super Bowl history. This is, going all the way back to the 90s and us going up 2-0 on the Yankees and coming home and losing 4 straight and then never winning another World Series game after that. Like, this is one thing. This is trading away Dominique Wilkins. Like, this is, like your team getting to the Super Bowl and your starting safety gets arrested for prostitution. Like, this just always, your star of your franchise goes to jail for dogfighting. Like, this just happens to us. And so I think yesterday some of that emotion was just because I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And I tried in the first half to not care, right? Like, I tried to come to terms with, like, we're probably overmatched. It's Nick Saban. Like, they're going to win this game and that's going to be okay. But then we were winning and we had them, Will. And that's why in the second half, I just really lost it because I'm like, it's better to have just not been in this thing and to have said, okay, we need to regroup. Win one for the Gipper moment. Way to go, kids. You overachieved, and that's okay. But we could have won. We should have won. We were better for most of that game. And
I think you got robbed, Elle? Do you think you got robbed?
No, I don't think we got robbed. I think we got out-coached. I mean, I love Kirby Smart, and I kept getting reassurances from, Matt Barry and Bucci, like, Kirby Smart is not Mark Richt, and, like, Kirby Smart is, he's not going to take the foot. But they even kept saying it. I think he was trying to hold on and win, and that was never going to be enough. I think he was playing not to lose instead of playing to win, and I thought that the play calling got really uncreative by Chaney. I questioned a lot of what he decided to do. I know how fast, Alabama is, but I think we should have tried to test the perimeter a little bit more, which is where any running team that's run well and successfully against Alabama, they've done well there, not between the tackles, outside of the tackles. I think we didn't utilize our backs in the way that we should have, and I think that in overtime specifically, I think he chose to throw at the wrong time. How do you not try and take a shot into the end zone on first down? You knew you had the leg. Like, you knew you had the kicker to do it. But then in a 3rd and short situation is when you decide to throw, when you knew they're going to bring the heat. I just felt like we were trying to not lose, and that's why we ended up losing the game, and I could see it coming from a mile away.
You know what you looked like? You looked like Oklahoma against Georgia.
Exactly.
That's what you looked
That's
like.
exactly what we looked like.
Right.
We just outsmarted ourselves consistently.
Elle, I have gained a whole new appreciation for you. I'm serious. Like, just care. I love that you cared. I care. That's why I do this. Like, I think we're just so many people around here that's like, it's a mark of virtue if you don't care, if you're dispassionate. Hell with that, man.
No.
I don't know. I like how you cared a lot.
Thank you. I care, Will. I care. We just maybe I care a little bit too much, but I do. I care, and we just care more. And again, I agree with you. I think that's why hopefully we all got into sports, is because we all are fans. And there's times for objectivity, and there's times for you to just go for it and be a fan. And last night I was a fan. And listen, I think the biggest win was that I didn't cuss on air. I came close a couple times, but I didn't, and so I feel like that's a win.
All right. Well, there's one win for you guys last night. There you go. You can chant SEC. You can do that. All right, Elle. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Will.
Elle may not feel like the dogs got robbed, but there are a lot of people that do, and I'm going to tell you something. The officiating was not on the up and up. It was not, okay? The officiating was suspect. Plus Damien Woody in studio. It's Will Cain on The Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Hi, everyone. Will Cain here. Support for The Will Cain podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/will. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030. Where's Damien? Where's Damien Woody? Let's get him in here. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, presented by Progressive Insurance. What's Woody doing? Hanging out outside?
Phone call.
He's taking a phone call.
It's a big deal. He's got stuff to do. You're clearly second on his list of important things to do.
Come on now. I see him hanging outside the door. Let's tell him to come in whenever he wants, I guess. Take your time. Whatever you want to do. Take your call. Go over there, I think. We're not doing a radio show or anything. Get your mic and tell me who was on the phone. It's Damien Woody in studio.
Listen, when you're taking a phone call from the big boss, the wife, that's pretty important.
It was your wife?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't any other time, man. I would be in here, but man, when the wife calls, sometimes you gotta chalk it up to that.
I don't believe you. I feel like it's Belichick. Are you staying in New England? Absolutely. You're in here in the fanciest suit I've ever seen you in. It's double-breasted. It's shining, gorgeous, good-looking. You got a banker's collar on. I've never seen you so spit-shined. I have never seen. And by the way, you're clean-shaven, that's different, right?
That's different, yeah.
I feel like that was a job call.
No, not at all. Not at all, man. It's a new year. You know, got to bring the fire. That's it.
All right. Did you watch last night?
Absolutely. Come on now. I was up like half the night. That's why I needed a caffeine rush this morning when I came in.
Seriously. Right?
Yeah.
What time did you get to? I got to bed about 1:30.
I think I crashed at like 2:15, and then I had to get up at like 5 o'clock.
To talk about like Tom Brady on NFL Live,
just talk about everything. Brady, the Seth Wickersham article, all that type of stuff. So
I don't want to talk about NFL stuff yet. I want to know what you thought of that game last night. What happened to Georgia? Why did they? You know what? When Oklahoma lost to Georgia, I said Lincoln Riley. He puckered up.
Yeah,
he got tight.
Yeah.
Same thing last night on the other side of the equation.
I think when you're talking about Alabama and Nick Saban, the great thing about Nick Saban, what makes him the best, and it's along the lines of Belichick, he comes from that tree, is the adjustments in the game. And when you watch the first half as opposed to the second half, what you saw, the difference was the rushing by the University of Georgia. They could not rush the ball. They could not run the ball. That made a huge difference in that Georgia offense, because now it put almost all the onus on Jake Fromm to make big time throws. He had made them in the first half, but that's because he had a rushing attack that was putting them in 2nd and 5, 3rd and 3. That when you're in those type of situations, it's easy for a play caller. It's easy for a quarterback. But when you're in 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, now you're playing right into the Alabama defense and Nick Saban. They're able to mix things up and bring all types of exotic pressures. That's a tough situation for any quarterback.
Sony Michel only touched the ball like 6 times in the second half.
Yeah.
He went 98 yards on 14 carries, only touched it 6 times in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this. It was during the semifinal game. It was Bert Bielema said this. He and Gary Patterson were the only 2 defensive coaches in the coach's film room. What?
Brett Bielema.
Quiet.
You always call him Bert. What are you doing?
Don't do that.
Brett Bielema. What are you doing?
Brett Bielema. He looks like a Bert.
Well, he's not.
Well, he is now.
Figure it out, Will.
He's a Brett.
I've just changed him to Bert.
Okay.
Bert Bielema said to all the other coaches in the room, he was one of only 2 defensive coaches. He said to all the offensive coaches, why do you stop running the ball? Like, a weird thing. I've seen you guys rip off like 70, 80-yard runs. You're progressing with the ball, and you back it up with 3 pass plays. Mm-hmm. He's like, I just don't get it. I don't understand it. So what it's told me is defensive coaches or opposition coaches often feel the same way as we fans do. Why are we getting away from what we do? Why are we getting away from what is working? Have you felt like that on the offensive side of the ball? Why are we changing up what we do?
Oh, absolutely. Listen, what got Georgia to this point is that dual threat in the backfield, with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. That's what really carried Georgia to this point. Now, obviously, you saw the natural progression from Jake Fromm in that they started opening up the playbook more and more as the season went on. That's to the credit of the coaching staff and how you develop a young player. But you never forget your identity. you never forget what got you to that point. And when at the beginning of the game, what you saw, I think they threw the ball 7 straight times. Now, I understand sometimes you want to change up tendencies and you want to try to maybe throw the ball to open up the run game, but you can't stray to the point where you forget who you are and what got you to this point.
Right.
And I think in the second half, Georgia kind of strayed away from what got them to this point. And part of that is Alabama and that defense started to clamp down on those runs, but you can't put all that pressure on your true freshman quarterback to save the day, especially against a Nick Saban-led defense that throws all different types of looks and pressures at you. That's a tall order to ask for a freshman quarterback.
It's Damien Woody in studio giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. I only have like a minute, man, so I'll just ask you this one NFL question. This Seth Wickersham stuff, the article, the investigative report on ESPN.com, Brady, Belichick, Kraft, cracks in the foundation. Big deal or no big deal?
No, I don't think it's a big deal. Listen, anytime when you've had the success that the New England Patriots have had, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's no question. I don't think that anyone would dispute that, but there's no better organization equipped to handle these type of distractions. They've done it. We've seen it with whether it's Deflategate, Spygate, whatever type of gate that's come their way. This organization has dealt with it and actually have used these things to their advantage to propel them to hosting Lombardi Trophy. So
I know you're right.
I'm telling you, man, I know I've been in the building when these things have happened. I was there in 2001 when Lawyer Malloy got cut the week one, and we got destroyed by the Buffalo Bills 31-0. And one of our former colleagues, Tom Jackson, said after the game, they hate their coach. Well, guess what? We used that. We ended the season, beat the Buffalo Bills 31-0, and we won the Super Bowl. So they hear, they see what people are saying. They'll just take this and just ride this whole thing out.
All right. Thanks for walking in. After you wrap
this is my first time on here.
I know. We're going to get this.
Yeah, I mean, like we got to really chop it up on here.
We're going to.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
I'm going to give you an all access.
You kind of like you're like easing me in this thing. I think you're kind of like lulling me to sleep.
I watched The Punisher for you on your recommendation.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
We'll do that next time.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right. Coming up, I've teased it for a while, but why Georgia fans should feel a little bit like they got robbed. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, presented by Progressive Insurance. Was Georgia robbed last night? Well, I'll tell you this. If I'm a Georgia fan, I think you have reason to think that. I think there's evidence last night that it didn't go. It wasn't on the up and up. It wasn't all fair. The calls, I have to say, and I had no rooting interest in this game, the calls went heavy Alabama. I tell you, if you want to believe in conspiracies, if you want to believe that referees had to keep Alabama in the game, I'm going to tell you something, Georgia fans. They gave you reason last night. I'm not telling you it was the determining factor in the ball game. I think Alabama was the better team. I think Nick Saban made the ballsy call. I think Nick Saban was the one with his willingness to go out on a limb that won that game. But I think the officials gave you something. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. But first, we got to get a quick update from Bubba. What's up, Bubba, in Lithuania?
All right, the Ball brothers made their debut. LiAngelo Ball scored 19 points, while his younger brother, LaMelo Ball, finished with 10 and had several no-look assists. Cool. To lead whatever their team is to a 90-80 victory over another team. My question to you, are they big ballers or small ballers?
19-10 in Lithuania? Verdict?
Several no-look assists.
Oh, that changes it. I was so close to going small ballers until you said several, not just one no-look assist. Several no-look assists in Lithuania?
For LaMelo, yeah.
Big baller. Big baller. As opposed to you, Bubba.
Right.
Small baller.
Right.
All right. Back to the stateside, where Alabama beat Georgia 26-23. Let me walk you through what I think were 5 to 6 sketchy calls throughout this game that if you're a Georgia fan, you have a right to go, what is going on? First of all, this is the moment of truth. There are Blocked punt truthers all over the internet right now, and they're not wrong. That's the problem. First play, first possession in the second half, Alabama has a punt blocked by Georgia on its own 24. Georgia gets a great jump, but Georgia is called offsides. Georgia wasn't offsides. You can see the replay. They got a great jump. They made the block, but the block was negated. In fact, you could say a couple Alabama players were the ones that moved early, starting their back pedal before. But no Georgia player was across the line by the time that thing was hiked. That punt block would have been a huge moment in the game. It wasn't called your way, Georgia. Number 2, there was a massive face mask that went totally uncalled as well. Alabama defender tackles Swift, number 7 Swift. He's sweeping around, and I don't know how you missed this. His entire head swings around, not just in a 180, but a complete 360. Because the defender has the bottom rung of his face mask swinging him around. Henry Ruggs of Alabama received a touchdown on the next play. Alabama makes the score 13-7. Another play in the second half. 2nd and 5, Alabama's Mack Wilson tackles Jake Fromm as he runs around the outside, gets Fromm to the ground, and then gives him a little shove straight to the head after Fromm was already on the ground. It's completely after the play. It's completely extracurricular. Completely extracurricular. Georgia's up 20-10 at that point. That's a huge penalty that wasn't called. That's 3 calls. And then 20-13 with 3:56 to go, 4th and 4, Alabama going for the tying play. Alabama's offsides. Alabama's false start. Receiver starts early on the outside. By the way, Tua Tagovailoa on that play to tie the game, he wasn't targeting Cam Ridley. I love the way he played that game. He wasn't targeting.
Does it matter?
It matters a little bit. Come on. Can we agree, first of all, that's not what he was doing?
He saw 2 guys in the area and decided he had a
he never
double the chance to score the touchdown.
Nonsense. He never saw Cam Ridley. Never. He was throwing it to 22 at the back of the end zone.
That's just next level awareness, Will. You wouldn't know anything about it.
Outflashed Ridley, caught that ball. I'm not trying to take things away from Alabama. Again, I think Alabama was the better team. I think Nick Saban was the better coach. But these calls went completely against Georgia's way. Add to that, number 48 from Alabama, who punched a Georgia player in the helmet in his head. Again, another unsportsmanlike penalty that was not called. 48 stayed in the play, made a huge special teams play later in the game. That was after, by the way, he also got in a fight on his own sidelines, went after one of his own coaches. So that's what, 6 calls that were clear, obvious penalties that should have gone in Georgia's favor that did not, that went in Alabama's favor. Now, to be fair, to offset it, on the long Georgia touchdown in the first half, it was a question about whether the receiver stepped out of bounds. Honestly, I think it's a close call. I think you can call it either way. I don't know that you could see green between his heel and the sideline. It was obviously a massive play in the game. Put Georgia up. And Alabama fans would go, whoa, he was offside. I mean, he was out of bounds on that play. Not all calls went our way. But to be fair, it's like 6-1. 6 different calls that were clear for Georgia. Didn't go their way.
Is this a Nick Saban conspiracy? What are we saying here?
Well, I mean, people on social media last night were saying refs keeping Alabama in the game. I'm not going to do conspiracy. I'm not going to do it. I'm just saying Alabama got all the breaks last night. Griffin in Iowa, you're on the Will Cain Show. What's up, Griffin?
Hey, not too much. How you doing? Listen, I'm listening here, and I'm actually a high school official, too, so I kind of watch it from both angles, but I'm just a little annoyed. That face mask, that was a very tough call to see. I know you said it was blatant, but the way he was falling down and the referees and their keys that they're watching, tough to see the way he fell down. I think the Alabama guy ended up getting called for getting punched in the face, but I don't know. Again, I think we have a different conversation next week today, if they do make all those calls that, Alabama fans are going to be blowing up too. So I don't know. You're not a conspiracy guy, but I hate to hear you talking like that and listen to all these things.
Thanks for the call, Griffin. Listen, you're right. I'm not a conspiracy guy. And I'm not saying this determined the outcome of the game, but I got to also call it like it is when I see it. The truth of the matter is, I don't think it was those were huge plays in the game. all of them going Alabama's way, except for the close call on the sidelines of whether or not the Georgia receiver stepped out of bounds. It's a difference between being conspiracy and just pointing out the truth when you see it. If you tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. 888-729-3776. But I got to tell you, if you're a Georgia fan, you have a right to go, man, I don't know. I think you would have lost, Georgia. I think you would have lost either way you cut it, but I think you have a right to expect a little more in how that game is played. The Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive's Home Insurance. Get your quote at Progressive.com today. Coming up, more on this improbable comeback. Is Alabama set up for a dynasty? Are they set? Well, they already are a dynasty, but are they set up for this to keep going for years and years? Freshman quarterback Tua Tagovailoa certainly makes you think so. Was this a more improbable comeback than the Pats against the Falcons? It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
A champion crowd.
Throwing it down the far sideline, and it is caught for a touchdown. Devontae Smith wins the national championship.
The Crimson Tide will not be denied.
Was that a good game or what?
A beautiful throw, a clutch catch, and Alabama is the national champion in overtime.
The dynasty continues for Alabama.
It's the Will Cain Show, reminding you that you can watch all 3 hours of the show on ESPN News. I've been told several times it says to be announced. It's announced. It may not be on your topic bar, it may not be on your guide, but it is the Will Cain Show from 3 to 6 Eastern on ESPN News. I said, and I didn't say that it's a conspiracy, I didn't say Alabama was an unjustified champion in college football. I didn't say that. I don't even think Georgia was robbed, but I don't think the game was called 100% fairly. I think, well, Booger McFarland, boy, one of his favorite sayings is water always finds its level. Boy, he works that one in a lot. I love you, Booger. I got it. Water finds its level. The water finding level in this game was that Alabama was going to find its way to a victory. Nick Saban was going to overpower Georgia. Now, it may have taken some ups and downs. It may have taken some risks. It may have taken some big, bold calls along the way. It may have taken putting in freshman quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. It may have even looked shaky after he was in. But I do think Georgia was going to eventually lose to Alabama, despite the fact they should have gotten, by my count, like 5-6 more calls going their way. Kevin, listening on Sirius XM in Ohio. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, man. Just calling because, I don't think anybody needs to be mad about that offsides, because technically the refs got it wrong to begin with. They should have called a false start. Now, I get that, the face mask should have been called and the punching should have been called. I get why Georgia fans are sloppy and mad about that, but at the same time, the refs got that call wrong to begin with, and that punching never even happened. It was a false start.
Well, okay, I get your point, Kevin, but the refs, they called the wrong penalty, first of all. I mean, that's like 2 steps down the road. First of all, they called Georgia offsides. Georgia wasn't offsides. So then the punt block would have stood. Your point is, well, no, Alabama committed another penalty before there, thus saving them from the block punt. But you're not going to go back and reinsert a new penalty to protect you from your own mistake. You're right. If we'd achieved perfection in that play, Georgia would not have been offsides. Alabama would have been charged with a false start, and the punt would have happened exactly the way it went, which would have been Alabama repunting, this time 5 yards back instead of 5 yards forward. But the truth of the matter is, the flag that they threw was wrong. Picked up, the play stands, and that's a big moment in the game for Georgia, blocking that punt. I don't know. We had, in the previous segment, we had a referee, a guy who refs, I believe, what was it, in Ohio, call. It's tough for these guys. I get it. But I don't know. I think there's too much replay. We have the ability to analyze every step of the way. We see everything they do wrong. We see all the mistakes, and we know how integral and important they are to the game. And I don't think Georgia got all the calls they should have gotten last night. All right. So last night, several people said, I just heard the promo on Golick and Wingo. Alabama's set up, man. They are set up for the future. They had last night freshmen playing integral positions at quarterback, running back, 2 wide receiver positions, offensive tackle. I saw this stat. Freshmen last night accounted for 257 of Alabama's 371 total yards. Alabama is set up for the future.
Yeah, but they're always set up for the future. The only difference now is that they have the quarterback that usually beats them in the national title game. They have that guy on their roster now.
The only thing, Rudy, I think about that is as I watched Tua emerge last night, I kept thinking about my team. I kept thinking about the Texas Longhorns. And I'm not alone.
Selfish.
No, this is sports. This is Elle Duncan, living and dying and feeling every moment as a Georgia fan. I believe real fans, like the ones I like being around, are the ones that are all in with their team. And if you pour every moment through the prism of your team, I'm all right with that. And I sit there and I go, why can't Texas find a quarterback since 2009? And Nick Saban just grabs a freshman off his bench in the national championship game. But I did think, if a freshman can step in and take Georgia to the national championship game, if a freshman can step in the second half of the national championship game and win it for Alabama, that means it can happen in a lot of places. Younger and younger quarterbacks, star high school studs, playing massive roles in the outcome of college football's national champion. I mean, why not at Texas? Why not in Michigan? Lord knows Jim Harbaugh needs it. Tua Tagovailoa represents sort of a double-edged sword to me. Yeah, it means Alabama's set up for some time. But yeah, it also represents, maybe symbolically, hope for every other program. You can find your own Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I get it. He lit up Elite 11 camps before he went to Alabama. Do we have that sound? Apparently, it was on this show. Well, it was on Russillo's show, right? Where Trent Dilfer talked about?
Yeah, it was about a year ago. He was raving about Tua, saying that he was the best quarterback at this stage in his development. So he must have been a senior in high school at the time because he was an Elite 11 guy. The best that he'd seen at that point in his life ever in his history of coaching.
Will Cain Show is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. By the way, give us a call, 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. You can tweet the show on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. That's at Will Cain Show, or I, personally, am at Will Cain. Greg McElroy said last night that, how long does this sound? Do I have time to hit it? I don't have time to hit it. I'll have to just tell you. He said Tua's going to win a Heisman. He also said at halftime, I don't think I'd make the move for Tua. I want to get him to reconcile those two thoughts. So, we're calling up Greg. See if we can get in here. Straight ahead. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Greg McElroy coming up next.
This is the Will Cain Podcast on ESPN Radio.
SEC, 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 SEC,
SEC, SEC, yeah! Woo! What's up, College Station?
SEC.
Ever heard of it? What's up, Tennessee? Go Suns! What's up, Florida?
SEC.
How about you, Bama?
No? Bama? What about you, Bama? You're with us, right? We need you, Bama. No SEC? Ah, so sad. SEC, it's not a shared prize. You don't have 1/14 of a national championship today. Instead, the Alabama Crimson Tide is national champion again, beating Georgia last night 26-3 in the college football national championship game. The Alabama Crimson Tide once again reigns supreme. I want to do this. Here, if you don't believe me, I think it's embarrassing. The Florida Gators tweeted that out last night. The Florida Gators official account tweeted out. Tweet it out to champ. Bubba, hit it one more time. This is what, in written form, Florida tweeted out last night.
SEC.
An embarrassment for, by the way, a very proud program in Florida. And now you're borrowing some shine from the Alabama's Crimson Tide.
Riding those coattails. That's what the SEC has become.
Your little brother, man. You're cheering on Big Brother and all of his accomplishments. It's embarrassing. I could use worse analogies. I could talk about you're just a Germanic tribe cheering on the Romans after they've taken your women, stolen your goods, and conscripted your men into a slave army. You're now marching with the Romans off to France and chanting along the way, Rome, 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 Rome. He's fired your coaches. He's defeated your teams. He's stolen conference championships. He's burned through the entire conference, and now, in maybe his ultimate act of domination, Nick Saban has made you chant his program, because when you're chanting SEC, you are chanting Crimson Tide.
SEC!
It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, like SEC Network analyst Greg McElroy on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Honest question, Greg, because this is my contention. Bama fans don't chant SEC, do they? You don't?
Not often. No, not often. To be frank, you hear it every once in a while, but it is usually at a little bit lower level bowl games, the national championship game. So, I got to give them a break, though. Look,
of course you do, because you're the kind older brother. That's what's going on here.
It's just the conference has become just such a punching bag for the other 4 Power 5 leagues.
Oh,
and look,
please.
The SEC, it has. The SEC, does it play the best brand of football? I don't know. Do we really ever know? I mean, is it a sense of pride for people in the South because we feel occasionally we feel like we're overlooked and looked down upon, and they refer to us as flyover states? So
I get that.
It's a source of pride, and I think it's a sticking point, and it's a way to rally the troops when everybody else looks down upon you. So I think that's really about it. More so than anything else.
Don't you dare throw the elite liberal media coastal thing on me, man. Don't you do flyover states with me, not this show.
Not me, brother. Not me, I can assure you. No, I'm just saying, I think, the football is more than a sport in the South, and it means more to people in the South. And I know that has been a point of mockery at times for some of the other conferences throughout the land, too, because they've made fun of the Southeastern Conference slogan, "It just means more." But it is very true. As someone that has spent time living in New York, L.A., Dallas, Cincinnati, Nashville, and Birmingham and Charlotte, it really does mean more.
That's all
in
poetic.
The Southeast.
That's all poetic and nice. And some of it is true. But the God's honest truth is you guys rooting for each other is an offense against the concept of fandom. I'm from Texas. I'm a Longhorn fan. I know very well how you have hurt me personally in my life. How you, Greg McElroy, have taken national championship games from my teams. But you won't find me right now chanting Big 12 at conference basketball games. It's clearly the best conference in basketball right now. You're not going to hear me at a TCU game chanting Big 12. No. You don't get to walk over what should be the nature of sports and local rivalries.
And that's why I think that there were a lot of Longhorn fans chanting Boomer Sooner in the Rose Bowl.
They were not.
Who was it?
They were not. That is junk.
You were all in. You were all in, Team Baker.
Get out of here.
You're not fooling me. No, I'm with you. It's a little ridiculous. And for other programs to beat their chest because of the accomplishments of 2 teams. Now, it's not a 1-team league anymore. I got to give Georgia credit. They've eliminated that from the conversation. The performance last night even furthered that notion, is that it's no longer just Alabama and everybody else. Alabama is, of course, the elite program, but Georgia's nipping at their heels, and I think will eventually close that gap even more. So it's no longer a 1-team league, but I'm with you. There's no reason why the rest of the league needs to be pounding their chest, feeling great about themselves, when really it was kind of a lackluster season to begin with.
There you go. That's the honesty. That's the arrogance we need. It's really all about you guys. It's really about Alabama. All right, listen, I dipped in and out of different megacasts last night. I dropped into Feinbaum Room. I'm a fan of yours. I told you when I met you in the hallway, outside of your 2009 performance, I'm a fan of yours. And I heard you say this last night. You brought up 2009. You brought up that game against Texas. And as callers into the Feinbaum show and his megacast started calling for the quarterback change, you brought up Garrett Gilbert. You brought up Texas. So at that point in the game, I noticed Greg McElroy, with some historical context in his own personal life, was going, I don't know about a freshman quarterback, right?
Absolutely.
So
I was sitting there thinking to myself, Will, I mean, this can go one of 2 ways, all right? And let's be frank, 9 times out of 10, if you put a true freshman in with minimal experience and 0 experience in meaningful games, what's the result going to be? 9 times out of 10, it's going to be ugly. And it was on a couple different occasions, like taking a sack on the first play of overtime and throwing a bad interception as he rolled to the left and having really bad clock management at the end of the game as they tried to center it, but he wasn't comfortable taking an under center snap. So there were moments where you're like, oh, this could get a little dicey.
By the way, Greg, he wasn't throwing to Ridley on the touchdown pass, right? We can agree on that.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. If he was, it was the greatest anticipation I've ever seen. And you know what? If I'm Tua, I would never tell the truth as to who I was throwing to, ever. But I will say this, his incredible moments far surpassed the negative moments and the hurdles that he had to overcome. I mean, look, and the people today, they're like, well, why didn't he start the whole season? Well, you kind of saw that. You saw the moments that leave you scratching your head a little bit. He's a freshman, and yes, we will remember that incredible pass down the left sideline. We'll remember the scramble on 4th and 4. We'll remember the scramble early in the game on 3rd and 7 when he first got in there and kind of got the momentum going. And just the way he diced up a good Georgia defense through the year. That's what we'll remember. But I don't think we need to get so far gone as to say that this should have happened 6 weeks ago, because that's just ridiculous. Nick Saban knew that Tua Tagovailoa, for all the good he could bring, he could also bring a significant amount of bad too. Now, they didn't have to necessarily beat all these other teams and have this unbelievable passing attack to get to the point to where they were at until the second half of last night's game.
Nice
so
job.
I credit him adjusting with what the game needed and making the boldest call of his coaching career by changing a quarterback that's 25-2 in exchange for a true freshman that had a hot hand in the practice field.
Hey, Greg, that's been my position. I just can't think of a gutsier, more bold call. I don't even think the onside kick in 2015. I don't think Sean Payton's onside kick. I think benching a 25-2 quarterback at half for a freshman that like you said, a lot of guys said he had something in his bag, that he had this sparkle to him. But like you said, there was a lot of mistakes that were potentially coming onto the field as well right there. By the way, I got to get out of here.
A lot of sparkle to him, but I mean, this is on the practice field. It's a little different when 28 million are watching. So, I think he's a special player, and I have high hopes for him. But that was an incredibly bold play by Nick Saban and a great understanding of what the game needed for them to get the win.
Really nice job on the pronunciation of Tagovailoa as well. Really good.
Lots of practice.
Yeah?
Lots of practice on that one. That's one you read in the mirror a few times. And make sure you have the perfect phonetic understanding of the syllables. But it wasn't easy the first few times I went through it.
All right. Look, man. I like having you on the show. I want to have you more. I want to break down how confident you felt when Garrett Gilbert walked on the field at some point. But we'll get to that some other time, okay?
At a later date, my friend.
All right.
Best of luck to you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. The Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch to Progressive can save an average of $620. So we heard the show today. Lane Kiffin went on the Le Batard show. He said if Tua didn't play, if that didn't happen last night, he was going to leave Alabama. Find out if that's true next. It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Hi, everyone. Will Cain here. Support for the Will Cain podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, and your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/will. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030. I'm trying. I'm from Sherman, Texas. Tagovailoa. Josh Pacheco out there in Hawaii at ESPN Honolulu in the Pacific Media Group. Shaka, Maui, Noko'oi. What's up, Josh? Says, can we get everyone nationally to pronounce Tua Tagovailoa's name correctly? It really isn't that hard, folks. You wouldn't butcher everyone else's name. Take the time to get it correct. I'm working on it, Josh. I'm working on it. I just called Bert Bielema a few minutes ago, so I wouldn't take it personally.
I mean, the idea that it's not that difficult is a little ridiculous. Like, he could knock you for getting it wrong, but then to be like, it's really not that hard. Okay, dude.
The guy who called him Bert Bielema. And to my defense, he doesn't look like a Brett. Like, I don't look at Bret Bielema and say, that's a Brett. I say that's a Bert.
What do you think a Brett looks like?
A Brett is, in my mind, Bretts aren't that tall. Bretts are slight. Brett's often have, I would put like a flat top on a Brett. Like
I was going to say, yeah.
Right?
Spiky haircut.
Spiky haircut on a Brett. Fair?
I picture Brett's to be blonde.
Definitely blonde. There's no such thing as a brunette Brett. I don't even think they've ever made one.
What are we thinking, like, personality-wise?
Cocky.
A little bit of a tool.
Well, just cocky.
Yeah, okay.
So, in essence, a short, slight, spiky-haired blonde who's a little cocky. Do we know a Brett? Did we just describe one specific Brett?
Which is the opposite of Brett Bielema.
No, the opposite. Now let's do Bert and tell me you don't describe Bert Bielema. If I said describe a Bert, you'd come up with Bert Bielema. So, in your face, Bubba. So, speaking of sound, listen to this, all right? This is Lane Kiffin on Dan Le Batard a little earlier today.
You know, the word was, you know, after not putting him in the Sugar Bowl, after he really thought that he'd beat Jalen out and ability to play, that Tua was gone. You know, and was gone this week coming up right here because schools start their spring semesters.
That's a rumor. We just had Rece Davis on a little bit earlier. That's a rumor that Lane Kiffin is not pioneering himself, Cerruti. That is something that Rece Davis acknowledged was the word on the street, was the rumor on the street. That Tua, number one, had come in and performed very well in spring, all fall, and had pushed Jalen Hurts. And in the time between the end of the season and the Sugar Bowl, in many minds, and perhaps most importantly, in Tua's mind, he had outperformed Jalen Hurts. He had emerged as the guy who should be starting for Alabama. And he didn't in the Sugar Bowl. So there was some question going into this. I believe Lane Kiffin. Would Tua stay at Alabama?
The only thing that I can't buy in this whole situation is, do you really think that Nick Saban wouldn't make him the starting quarterback next year? I think win or lose last night, Jalen Hurts, that was his last start for Bama. If he knew how talented this guy was and he was going to lose him, I don't think there's any way that he'd be like, all right, yeah, go ahead, transfer. We don't need you here.
Well, I think your fatal flaw in your scenario to me was you said win or lose. The reason that it was a bold call for Saban to bench his 25-2 starter who'd thrown one interception this year is that Jalen Hurts was your reigning SEC Offensive Player of the Year. He had been the guy. And if that had continued, if Jalen Hurts had been the one that brought them on a comeback last night, no matter how improbable you think that might have been, it would have been really hard then to bench that guy. I'm not saying Saban wouldn't have done it because I think Saban is the ultimate, like Belichick in, I'm picking the guy who's doing the job the best. But it would have been harder. I'm not sure Tua would have started next year.
I don't know. I mean, yes, Jalen had been the quarterback for he had 2 losses, 2 years as the starting quarterback. But I was talking to Brad Edwards and Trevor Matich, who are our College Game Day crew, a few weeks ago, and they were talking about this even before this happened. This was before the game against Clemson, that they think that Jalen Hurts, this would be his last year as a starting quarterback. This was before any of this controversy whatsoever, and before everybody knew Tua's name as a household name, even though they can't pronounce his last name.
Well,
so I mean, I think the tea leaves were there. I don't think Saban lets him walk out of that door knowing how talented he is. And do you really trust Lane Kiffin? Do we trust Lane Kiffin? Lane Kiffin has a vendetta against everything Alabama. He constantly makes fun of Nick Saban on Twitter. Like, we're going to believe him that Tua was going to transfer?
I don't know. I mean,
it's a great soundbite.
I heard him on
the
Le Batard show. He calls him the greatest coach of all time.
Maybe he is, but that doesn't mean he's trustworthy.
He's not just taking shots left and right at Alabama and Nick Saban.
He's constantly poking the bear.
Rece Davis, College Game Day host, told us a little earlier, this is what quarterbacks do, though. Quarterbacks transfer. When they see their path to the starting job blocked, they transfer. They find another place to start. So it wouldn't come as a surprise that a quarterback would want to do that. I'm not saying Tua did. I'm not saying Lane Kiffin is.
But do you think Tua said to Nick Saban, hey, if I don't get playing time in the national championship game, that I'm transferring?
No, but that doesn't mean the word isn't on the street.
But that's what Kiffin said, so he's wrong.
No, he said that was the word on the street. He didn't say gave Saban an ultimatum. He didn't say Tua, who had like an emotionless face as he both took a sack that he couldn't take and then threw a touchdown to win the game. That stone cold, calm, grace to God first guy walked into Saban's office and said, start me or I'm out, play me or I'm out. He didn't say that. Just, would he have transferred if he didn't get playing time? That's believable.
I just give Saban more credit for being able to keep that guy in the building.
Well, maybe. By the way, speaking of giving people credit, I just want to do this for a second. This is Jalen Hurts. We have time. We'll do it when we come back. We spend so much time giving athletes a hard time when they fail us, when they fall short of our expectations, when they aren't the way we want them to be in success and defeat. We owe it to them to give time to when they show to be absolute class acts, stand-up people. That's who Jalen Hurts was last night. Tweet the show to the 100flowers.com Twitter feed at Will Cain Show. Starting off the year with a little romance is easy at 100flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. To order, go to 100flowers.com/ESPN. Jalen Hurts deserves some high fives. He deserves some mention. That ahead on the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. Nice job, Rece. You rode bravely into that dark canyon, confidently, and came out the other side yelling Tagovailoa.
I don't think I said his name right all day.
But you did it confidently each time.
Pardon me?
But you did it confidently each time.
I did. As long as I didn't stumble.
Go confident. You've got it. Tagovailoa. We're getting some good feedback on the 100flowers.com Twitter feed at Will Cain Show, at Will Cain. Your take on Brett's literally described the only Brett I know perfectly. Another Brett, handle is Brett with 2 T's, said, I don't think you described me very well at all, Will. As he fit our description in every way but one. He had dark hair. Seemed to have hit a nerve there, small one. I think we got Brett's nailed.
Yeah, the guy with the dark hair, it was blonde at one time.
Oh, you're pretty sure he's doing a dye job.
Yeah, I mean,
he's awful young for a dye job.
Come on, Brett with 2 T's. We know what's up.
Does anybody young actually dye their hair darker? No one does that, really, right? That's for guys my age and up start doing that. I said before the break, we spend so much time, and I include myself in this, talking about when athletes let us down, critical of athletes, and how they react to success and failure. And I don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's wrong to look with a critical eye at, say, the way Cam Newton responds when his team loses, the kind of leadership he displays when things are not looking bright and shiny, when it looks dark. I think it's okay to use those moments and point out, maybe to your kids, maybe others, that's not how I want you to do this. That's not how we're doing it. So I think we have an obligation when someone is doing it exactly the right way, when someone is a class act, when someone shows real ability to stand up like a man and take failure, take defeat the way you would want them to. And that's the way Jalen Hurts conducted himself last night. I so badly wanted to wake my kids up this morning when I woke up. I stayed up till 1:30 with that game, and I couldn't wait for my kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old. I couldn't wait to wake them up and say, look at these 2 guys. First of all, when it comes to Tua, be ready for your moment. Be ready. Don't get down when you don't start. Don't get down and quit when the coach chooses somebody else over you, because when you get your moment, go grab it. Go take it. And on the other side, when you're not the guy, when it's taken away from you, how are you going to act? I hope you act like this.
Jalen, you've just been shaking your head. You've had that smile on your face. Your reaction when you found out Tua was going to start the second half, honestly.
He was going to step in and do his thing. You know, we have a lot of guys in the QB room that play really well, and he stepped in and did his thing. Did his thing for the team.
In every offensive huddle, you were right there next to him throughout the second half and overtime. What was your message to him?
Ball. Play your game. Ball. You know, he's destined for stuff like this. He's built for stuff like this. He has the it factor, and I'm so happy for him, happy for this team.
What does it mean to you to be a national champion?
It's unbelievable. I dreamed about this.
So incredibly impressive. Class act. Stood up, supported Tua Tagovailoa all throughout that second half, welcomed him back to the sidelines after every series, cheered him on, gave him advice, and when it was all said and done and he had to stand before Tom Rinaldi, not an easy position to be in, having lost his job but won the national championship, stood up like a man and answered questions like a class act.
What would you have done at, what was he, 19, 20? Because I would not have acted like that.
I don't know. It's one of those things like, how would you react in the moment of danger, right? Every one of us picture ourselves as the brave person in the moment of fear and danger. And what would you do in a crisis? I don't know. You really don't know.
Like,
until it happens to you.
Like, could you imagine if, like, you're doing the show and all of a sudden, like, a major story breaks and they're like, hey, we're going to get Bob Lee in there to replace you. It's just, we think he's better for this spot.
And he ends
up doing a great job on the show. And then and then they're like, hey, Will, what'd you think about Bob replacing you in the biggest story of the year? And you're like, you know what? Bob was killing it. He's the pro's pro, great guy, just happy there to support him. There's no way you react that way.
Well, first of all, how dare you talk about my character that way? Second of all, do I get a national championship at the end of that? Because one thing about Jalen Hurts you can say today is he may be a class act. You know what else he is? He's a national champion. And he's 26-2 as an Alabama starter. I don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to be on the Alabama Crimson Tide roster next year. I don't know if he's going to have QB listed next to his name. Is he going to be at Florida Atlantic with Lane Kiffin? If he transferred to someplace like the University of Texas, Jalen Hurts is from Texas, I don't know if he'd win the job. I can't honestly say he would.
Well, he's going to have to sit out a year, though, right?
Yeah, he'd have to sit out a year.
And we know Lane won't be there after a year.
That's got a 10-year contract, Bubba.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
You forgot, right? I don't know. He's an impressive guy. I don't know if he can play quarterback. I don't know if he can play quarterback for Alabama. I don't know if he can play quarterback for Texas or Florida Atlantic, for that matter. But he's an impressive guy. And he's a guy I'd point to with my kids and say, act like that. I don't know if you guys heard, but just, about 2.5 hours ago, it became official. John Gruden announced as the new coach of the Oakland Raiders. Mark Davis, owner of the Oakland Raiders, said, This is ground shaking.
Raider Nation, this is a big effing deal. Please welcome the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, Mr. John Gruden.
I think we can add Oakland Raiders owner Mark Davis to the Willisha. That's basically an omission, right? He listens to the show.
Yeah, what was that, day one when you said that?
What did I say that in reference to?
It was after the article from Wickersham.
Oh, yeah, it was the end of last week. I said, in the words of former Vice President Joe Biden, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, and he whispered with an open mic to President Obama, this is a big effing deal, the Seth Wickersham article was a big effing deal. And Mark Davis knows.
Raider Nation, this is a big effing deal. Please welcome
John Gruden, the new coach of the Oakland Raiders. It's a big effing deal, according to the Oakland Raiders. All right, one more on the home stretch here. Is Alabama set up? All those freshmen across the lineup. Left tackle, running back, wide receiver, quarterback. Is Alabama set up to dominate college football again next year? Early 2018 rankings are out, already out. Who's at the top? It's the Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. I'm telling you, I've been really, really humbled by the reception we've got in 2 weeks of this show. The feedback. The people. Humble yourself! I am humble, Bubba. Oh, people have joined on Twitter, at Will Cain Show, at Will Cain. I want to get active on Facebook. Ultimately, you know I want this to be a community. I want this to be...
Doesn't that make it our time?
Our time?
Right.
You giving me a call at 888-SAY-ESPN. Anyway, you can go on to the iTunes, rate, review the podcast, keep up. We're not doing a best of. A lot of people have asked, right, Bubba? A lot of people have asked. We're not doing that.
Right. We just have each hour is on there. Every hour, every second, listen to the whole thing.
Why aren't we doing a best of? Tell the people that want to know.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay. Because
that's for us to decide. You just listen to the hours.
Oh. Our executive, Bubba Peregrine. Did I get your last name right? Made that decision. I got Tagovailoa right on about the 10th try. I got Brett Bielema right on the 4th try. Just give me some time. Who is set up next year to make their college football run? Unfortunately, I think, for those of us who want to see a shakeup, well, a lot of the same names are listed as the favorites for college football's national championship next year. I just lost my internet connection. I had the 2018 college football rankings set up. So, Rudy, do you have the Las Vegas odds there in front of you?
I do.
Technology is failing.
It's probably pretty similar to what yours is, but obviously Bama is 3-1, the favorite to win it all again next year. Georgia's second, 9-2. Clemson is 6-1. Ohio State 8-1. Michigan's 10-1, which is a little bit surprising, and Penn State is 12-1. Your Texas Longhorns are 25-1.
Okay,
not bad.
Not bad.
I mean, I think heavy money is going to be on. I mean, everyone thinks that Tua's going to win the Heisman next year and Bama's going to repeat, right? That's odds-on favorite.
Here's your 2018. Technology has caught up with me. Your 2018 ESPN way too early top 25. Alabama number 1, Clemson number 2, Ohio State number 3, Oklahoma number 4, and Georgia number 5. You can just keep going, by the way. It's the same. Wisconsin 6, Miami 7. But the thing is, we learn this every year. It's not going to go that way. It's not just going to be a continuation of the present.
I mean, would you be surprised if Bama was in it again next year, though?
No, Bama's maybe the exception.
I have a good question for you.
I'll be the judge of that.
Do you think, maybe it's a terrible question, who knows? Where do you think Tua is the Heisman favorite going into next year? I wonder what his number is going to be. It's going to be high, only because there's going to be a lot of money going in on him. So it's going to lower the number to begin with.
Well, who will he be in contention with early season betting odds? Well, Kelly Bryant from Clemson?
Bryce Love, Jared Stidham. This is a list I'm looking at.
Stidham, really?
McSorley.
I could see McSorley being
Jake
there.
Fromm.
Yeah, Tua's going to be up there.
He's going to be he's going to be pretty high.
Off half a game. I'm feeling McSorley in that though.
He's going to lose Barkley.
He's going to lose Barkley.
Be way more
that
on
dude
him.
Has some moxie. He's got some go get it. If you're wondering about Bama and why they're always going to be at the top of the list, just look at this. This is who they were led by last night. Freshman Tua Tagovailoa, freshman Najee Harris, freshman Devonta Smith caught the game-winning touchdown, freshman Henry Ruggs III, freshman Jerry Jeudy. They had freshmen starting on the offensive line, replacing injured players. They had freshman running back, 2 wide receivers, quarterback. Freshmen accounted for 89% of Alabama's passing yards. Freshmen accounted for 35% of Alabama's rushing yards, 48% of their receiving yards. Freshmen won the game for Alabama last night. Freshmen scored 2 of their 3 touchdowns. Good Lord, we're going to be doing this again, aren't we? This time next year. One of the things I wanted to talk about today, and so we're going to do this tomorrow because we didn't get to it, is where does this Alabama dynasty now rank in all sports dynasties? I mean, college football being one thing, professional football, New England, Pittsburgh in the 70s, Dallas in the 90s, college basketball, UCLA in the 70s. So Rudy's got a thing or two to say about that.
It's just... Now, I mean, I feel like I'm being pegged as the hater on this show. But
you know what you are? You're a millennial.
I'm realistic,
skeptic.
Is how I would describe it. There's a lot. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but there's a lot out there about how easy it was for UCLA coming out of the West. They didn't have to play that many teams to get into the tournament or to get to the Final Four every single year. Now, granted, they had some great players, and John Wooden is an incredible coach. I'm not taking anything away from him, but it wasn't. Saban has it way harder now than UCLA did then. That's all I'll say.
So you put this over UCLA's basketball?
Definitely.
Really?
Definitely. This is college. There's never been a more competitive era in college sports than right now, especially football with all the money flying around. And he's so much better than everybody else.
You brought this up pre-show, by the way. How epic has every title game been? Over what kind of period are we looking at? And we're talking about every sport. World Series, Super Bowl, college football championship game. NBA Finals 2 years ago went to Game 7.
That was 3-1 comeback. You had the college basketball title game, Nova UNC, ended on a buzzer beater. You had Pats Seahawks 2015, Cubs Indians went 7 in 2016. Like I just said, Nova UNC 2016, game-winning buzzer beater in the title game. Cavs Warriors 2016, Astros Dodgers went 7 last year. Pats Falcons 28-3 game. Bama Clemson last year was an epic game, and then obviously Bama Georgia this year may have topped it. Probably did top it.
Why are we getting all these amazing championship games? I lived through the 80s and 90s Super Bowls when they were awful. They were blowouts. The story for 15 years was the AFC couldn't keep up in the Super Bowl. That the NFC championship game was the real Super Bowl. Why are we getting all these amazing championship games now? What's changed?
I think we're just lucky. I don't... Especially in pro sports, I mean, it's hard to,
lucky.
There's obviously, seriously, like, what, do you think there's a reason that, I just think we're in a time where we're just kind of lucky to be sports fans. What else? I don't know if there's any scientific reason why these games are so close. I mean,
all right, I'll give you 2, and I'm not sure which one is the right answer right now, but obviously when it comes to professional sports, there's been a concerted effort to achieve parity, to get more
in the
teams.
NFL, maybe, but not in the NBA. I mean, there's not a ton of parity in the NBA.
That's a good point.
Is there a ton of parity in baseball?
That's a really good point.
There's no salary cap.
Okay. See? You're not pegged just as the guy who's the hater. You're pegged to the guy that puts Will in check sometimes.
Straight facts, man.
Straight facts. All right, so then it's this. It's as we have progressed, as sports has gotten more advanced, as we've used more technology, coaching is better than it used to be. We would agree on that, right? Coaching today is better than coaching in the 70s and 80s. As players have gotten more athletic, as you reach the peak of things, as you advance to the top, the margins get thinner. The differences get smaller. The difference between winning and losing gets tighter. The better everyone is, the closer these games will be. You also brought an interesting conversation earlier today. What was more improbable for the state of Georgia? Losing to Tom Brady in the Super Bowl or losing to Tua Tagovailoa in Alabama in the college football national championship game? There's a lot we need to get to tomorrow. We're not done with all this. We'll move on, get back to some NFL as well. Can't wait to talk to you guys again tomorrow. Wake up every day saying I'm excited to talk to you. It's a Will Cain Show on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.